All right, and we're going to get started. Thank you all for your patience and welcome to our webinar called Every Book is a Writing Instruction Book. This is part of our Every Book Counts series. For the presentation, everyone's muted, so if you have any questions, you can direct them in the question box within Zoom. We'll be answering as many questions as we can at the end during our Q&A, and any questions that we can't get to during the presentation, we'll follow up via email. And this webinar is being recorded, and we'll make a link with the recording available to everyone within the next 24 to 48 hours after this live presentation. And you will also receive a certificate of completion in the follow-up email. So as I was saying that, I saw I got a question about that. So yes, you will receive one in the follow-up email, as well as links to any resources that are discussed this evening. We are gonna jump right in. So a little bit about us, Reading is Fundamental, RIF. Our mission is we are committed to a literate America by inspiring a passion for reading among all children, providing quality content to create impact, and engaging communities in the solution to give every child the fundamentals for success. So we were founded in 1966, and we're known as the leading voice for children's literacy. We partner with about 1 million volunteers and communities across the country to distribute more than 425 million books to more than 163 million children in all 50 states, inspiring generations to read, learn, and grow. And for more than 50 years, we've provided quality content to make an impact and engage communities in promoting a lifelong love of reading among children. So a few tips and tools. This evening's webinar is an interactive webinar. If you've been to any of our others, they're going to be kind of ran the same way. So we'll be asking questions to you all using the Padlet platform. And there's 2 ways you'll be able to access that. On each one, there's a barcode, and I will also be sending links throughout the chat. And yes, you can scan the QR code or check that. And then you can also use the Q&A box and the chat feature on Zoom as well. So I'm pleased to introduce our presenter this evening, Miss Dowan McNair-Lee, Dr. Dowan McNair-Lee recently. So a little bit about a dear friend of mine. She's a native Washingtonian, and she received her K through 12 education in public schools in DC and PG County in Maryland. She initially began her undergraduate experience as a bio major at Hampton University and HBCU in Hampton, Virginia. She left Hampton after her sophomore year and worked as an insurance agent. It was during this time she began to lead a youth dance ministry, and her love for teaching was reignited. She enrolled as an elementary education major at the University of District of Columbia. During her studies, she was a Paul Cook Scholarship recipient, a Ronald E. McNair Post-Baccalaureate Achievement Scholar, and an officer in Kappa Delta Pi Education Honor Society. After graduating summa cum laude, she began her teaching career in DC public schools, where she taught 3rd, 6th through 8th grade ELA, gifted education, and journalism. She was nominated for first year teacher of the year and was a recipient of another award for highly effective teaching, profiled in Education Week magazine, and participated as a Teach Plus policy fellow. She continued her education at Trinity, Washington University, where she earned her master's degree in curriculum and instruction with a concentration in reading and literacy. After graduation, she was an adjunct professor at Trinity and later became a full-time reading and writing specialist there. While at Trinity, she began her doctoral studies at GW, where she was introduced to Black feminist curriculum theory. Dowan left Trinity and returned to public schools in both DC and PG County, where she acted as a grade level chairperson and a professional development lead teacher. She was also an adjunct professor at Howard University, teaching literacy assessment courses to both undergrad and graduate students. And most recently, like I mentioned before, Dowan completed her first year as a tenure-track assistant professor of teacher education with an emphasis on urban education at the UDC. Her scholarship commitments with a celebration of her various identities as a Black woman who is a wife, mother, daughter, friend, and writer. And I am super excited for Dowan to be here. Thank you so much. And I am going to kick it off to her to actually start our content. So thanks, Dowan.
Thank you. Okay, so here's our agenda for this evening. We're going to talk about the power of picture books in the writing classroom. We're going to talk about how we integrate children's books into writing instruction. Then we're going to try it. So What I'd like you all to do is to access the Padlet. You can access the Padlet via the QR code that's posted, or you can access the Padlet via the link that should be posted in the chat. What I would like you all to do as you access the Padlet is just go ahead and type what you would like to learn from this webinar. So again, you may use the QR code that's posted, or you can utilize the Padlet link that is posted in the chat. And if you see where the little yellow arrow is, you'll see a plus sign. That's how you actually add your pad to the Padlet. So let's take a couple of minutes and do that right now. And Carly, can you go ahead and pull up the Padlet so we can see what folks are saying as they're populating it?
Sure thing. There you are. And I kept the QR code up there as well for folks who still want to use that.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll take another 30 seconds or so. All right, so as folks are still populating the Padlet, I'm just going to read a couple out that I'm checking. I see that someone wants to learn more strategies for using books within the ELA writing instruction. Reading strategies I can use with my students. Ideas using content area books for emergent readers. Strategies to incorporate picture books with writing. I saw someone said strategies to assist to pass along to teachers that they are mentoring. Engaging ways to teach writing, using picture books as writing mentor text, ideas of using content. I think I read that one. How to get more writing in my classroom, strategies I can use with multilingual learners, and strategies to support reading instruction. So thank you all so much for participating in what I call in my classroom our Do Now. So we can jump back into the PowerPoint now and go ahead to the next slide. So why should we use picture books to teach writing? So picture books demonstrate how to use language with economy and creativity. Picture books don't have a lot of words, so the authors have to utilize words with that pack a punch. And they also have to be creative with how they utilize those words because the words cannot compete with the pictures for the reader's attention. Picture books allow students the opportunity to match word choice with visual image. This makes the words used more memorable. So with picture books, students get to see what the author is saying instead of them having to go through the work of creating that visual image in their mind. So this immediately attaches a visual to the words, which gives students an opportunity to remember what has been said and to be able to pull those memories back up. Picture books tend to be accessible for all students across a variety of reading levels and English language acquisition. Picture books allow students to have a shared reading experience rather than having reading experiences that have been stratified based on reading level or acquisition of the English language. Finally, picture books are fun I love a great picture book. As Carly read in my introduction, I've taught everyone from third graders all the way to graduate students. And in every class, I introduce picture books because why? People enjoy them and they are fun. So I love to have fun, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We can move to the next slide. So for the purposes of this presentation, I focused our learning on the Common Core the Common Core anchor standards for writing. I did that because there's so much variety around writing standards, even in Washington, D.C. area where I am, that it was impossible for me to collect all of the standards into one place. So most of the standards that we utilize for writing are derived from the Common Core standards. And they are usually situated around three types of writing. We talk about narrative writing, we talk about argumentative writing, and we talk about informative writing. And then when we talk about writing, we're also talking about how writing is produced and distributed. Then we talk about writing for research, and then we talk about the range of writing. So within this particular webinar, we'll be focusing on some of the types and purposes of writing, the production of distribution in some ways, and then a bit about the range of writing. We can move on. So how do we use picture books to teach writing? The first thing that you should do in your classroom is just to read the book for enjoyment and comprehension. So the student should be introduced to a picture book purely for the idea of being able to enjoy the book and to understand the book. For me, I don't think that students should be introduced to a picture book and then have to answer questions or do a graphic organizer or a worksheet based on a first read. Let them enjoy the pictures, let them enjoy the words, let them take them in, and then have conversation about what they feel the book is about. Then when we're utilizing picture books to teach writing, we want to revisit the book after a first read to explore the specific writing techniques that the author uses. So after that first read, where we've enjoyed the book in community, after the first read where we've done some noticing and wondering, then we want to be able to revisit the book to look at the specific tools that the author uses to be able to convey their idea. And then after we look at the text for the specific tools that the author utilizes, then we'll provide time for the children to practice utilizing the text as a model for their own writing. I saw in the Padlet that someone says utilizing picture books as a mentor text, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want picture books to act as kind of a guide for students to be able to follow as they complete their own writing assignments. We can move on. So one of the things that one of the tools that I wanted to make sure that you all had tonight is a read aloud checklist. This read aloud checklist is one that I've used, and I also provided to my students at UDC to help them to be able to plan a read aloud. Now, one of the things that I found is that sometimes it's great to go into the read aloud organically and to be able to say, okay, we're just going to kind of flow in community and see what bubbles up. But when I'm trying to teach a specific strategy, it is very helpful for me to be able to say, hey, these are the things that I want to focus on as the teacher or the leader in this space, so that I can make sure that I am conveying through the way that I'm reading, through specific questions that I might be asking as I'm reading, to lead students into that conversation that we'll be having later with that text. So you all should be getting a link to this form. But one of the things that I ask is that on this form, just to kind of work through it, is as grade level, type of book, what is the title, the illustrator, and then I ask, what are you going to help draw attention to? Thank you. And important background information. So what are some things that you want to highlight or notice about the text before students even start reading it? There might be some things that you want students to have just a little bit of insight into before they read it, but it should be like not even an appetizer, it should be like a taste test. And then you're going to let your students get into it. Also, what vocabulary are you going to highlight as you're reading? There may be words or phrases that that you may come across during the read aloud that you want to make sure that students have access to, and that they don't have to do that work as they're listening to figure out what those words are. So you might want to highlight those words prior to doing the read aloud. Then you want to identify what questions you're going to read as you're reading the text. Are there questions that you're going to kind of interject, or are you going to just kind of let the read aloud go organically? I believe you can do it either way, but I think that if you are looking specifically for writing ideas, I think specifically if looking for writing, then you should focus on a specific skill, and maybe your questions should guide you towards that. And then how are you going to wrap up the read aloud? Is there anything you want to say or do at the conclusion of the read aloud that is going to be helpful for your students as they move to the next part of this activity? So that'll be shared with you all. It is a Google form, so you can feel free to make copies of it and utilize it. You can amend it as you need to for your needs. But that's just kind of a rough copy of what I use to help guide my read alouds. Okay, so with that, we are going to begin our read aloud of our text for this evening, Sweet Music in Harlem by Debbie L. Taylor and illustrated by Frank Morrison. My students know that I absolutely love Frank Morrison, like obsessed with Frank Morrison's illustrations. So I was excited to be able to read this text by Debbie Taylor with this read aloud that is sponsored by Lee and Low.
And Dowan, is it okay if I still spotlight you so everyone can see the camera,
Yes.
excuse me, the book nice and big? Okay, perfect.
Sure. Do you want me to start my video?
Yeah, she might. Yep, we can go ahead and do that. And then I'm gonna make you nice and big for everyone.
Okay, still saying I can't do that
Oh,
yet.
my bad. Let's see. Um, I don't know why. Sorry, everyone. I don't know why it's not letting you, Dowan. Hmm. Try now, Dawn.
Okay. Okay, here I am.
Okay, perfect, great. Now I can spotlight you. There we are.
All right. Hi, everybody. I know I was like a disembodied voice for a second, but I'm a person. Hi. Um, okay, so here we go. Sweet Music in Harlem. And this again is written by Debbie L. Taylor and illustrated by Frank Morrison. And I'm going to do my best to let you all see the pictures as I'm reading. Day. Where can my hat be? Called Uncle Click from the bathroom. The photographer from High Note magazine will be out front in an hour, and I've got to look good. It's not every day a Harlem trumpet player gets his picture taken. CJ smiled at the old poster on the wall. A young Uncle Click with a snappy black beret blew a gleaming trumpet. CJ looked at that poster every morning and dreamed of standing on stage, blowing his own sweet music for a room full of admiring folks. During the 4 years he had lived with Uncle Click, CJ had learned to hold his clarinet just right, to practice every day, and to keep a penny in his shoe for good luck. When he blew out the candles on his birthday cake next week, he'd wish that one day his own picture would be on the poster too. But for now, CJ just tried to make his notes ring out clear and strong from his Densett secondhand clarinet. Uncle Click chuckled as he walked into the room. Those were the days, he said, nodding at the poster. Back then, I played the meanest trumpet in Harlem. Now all I'll do is lose things. Don't worry, Uncle Click. I'll find your hat, CJ said. Where could you have left it? Well, said Uncle Click as he looked behind the couch. Last night, I stopped at the barber shop and the diner. Later on, I jammed at the Midnight Melody Club. Uncle Click's voice trailed off as he searched under the cushion of his favorite chair. When music was on Uncle Click's mind, he forgot about everything else. He could have left his hat anywhere, and there wasn't much time to find it. CJ ran down the street. The striped pole outside Garlic's barbershop glistened like a candy cane. Inside, the place buzzed as everyone talked at once. At Garlic's, neighborhood news traveled faster than the subway train speeding downtown. Did you see that Kansas City drummer cut loose at the Midnight Melody last night? One of the men shouted. Yeah, he was cool, but it sure was hot in there, someone else replied. Mr. Garlic talked louder than everyone. A toothpick jutting from the corner of his mouth bounced up and down as he scolded a fidgety customer. Mr. Garlic, CJ called, but no one heard him. Mr. Garlic, CJ said again louder. The barber finally spotted CJ and smiled. Looky here, it's my favorite young jazz man. Mark my words, he'll be a headliner soon. What can I do for you, CJ? A photographer from High Note magazine is coming soon, CJ blurted out, and Uncle Click lost his hat. Did he leave it here? Your uncle didn't leave his hat, but he did leave this, said Mr. Garlic, holding up a shiny watch. When Click blows his horn, that barber pole spins. But he is a little forgetful. CJ thanked Mr. Garlic and slipped the watch into his pocket. You say some photographer is coming from High Note? Mr. Garlic said. Well, a photo without Big Charlotte Garlic wouldn't be much of a picture, right, folks? As CJ hurried away, he could hear the people in the barbershop buzzing about the photographer. I've got to find that hat, CJ muttered to himself. CJ rushed around the corner and into the jam-packed Eat and Run diner. Just inside the door, he jumped back as a waitress zipped past, balancing plates of ham and eggs on one arm and home fries and sausage on the other. The waitress grinned at CJ, her apron still swaying from her dash around the room. Hey, CJ, she said. Hi, Maddie D, said CJ. Did Uncle Click leave his hat here? A photographer from High Note magazine is coming to take his picture in a few minutes, and Uncle Click needs his hat. Honey, Click didn't leave his hat, but he did leave this, said Maddie D. She pulled a handkerchief from her pocket and dropped it into CJ's hand. Your uncle leaves his things all over Harlem, but when he wails on his trumpet, the salt shakers bounce. And if you keep practicing, one day you'll make them bounce too. Thanks for the hanky, Maddie D, CJ said. Did you say a photographer from High Note magazine is coming? Maddie D asked. I'd love to be in the picture, especially if I can stand right next to your handsome uncle. As CJ left the diner, he could hear Maddie D telling her customers about the photographer. But I've got to find Uncle Click's hat. CJ raced down the block, then bounded down the stairs of the Midnight Melody Club. Even though the club was closed, 8 musicians were crowded onto the small stage, playing as if it were still showtime. The bass player's eyes glistened as he plucked his instrument. The vibraphone player tapped the keys with his eyes closed. CJ, the drummer shouted without losing a beat, we're saving a spot for you here. I reckon you'll be joining us in a few years. A woman strolled toward CJ from the back of the club. She didn't seem to notice it wasn't nighttime. She still wore a fancy dress and rings glistened on her fingers. Miss Alma, CJ called. A photographer from High Note magazine is coming to take Uncle Click's picture, and he can't find his hat. Did he leave it on stage last night? Canary Alma shook her head. Your uncle didn't leave his hat here, but he did leave this, she said, and plucked a bow tie from the piano bench. He's forgetful, but when Click blows his trumpet, the wallpaper curls. CJ thanked Canary Alma and slid the tie over his wrist. A photographer from High Note, Canary Alma exclaimed, smoothing her dress. My face next to your uncle's would give that photo a touch of class. CJ's shoulders dropped as he left the Midnight Melody Club. He didn't want to disappoint Uncle Click, but he just couldn't find the hat anywhere. CJ dragged his feet up the steps of the brownstone where his uncle waited, a lump like a sour ball wedged in CJ's throat. Uncle Click, CJ said, I didn't find your hat, but I did find these. He held out the watch, the handkerchief, and the bow tie. Uncle Click looked at CJ and a huge smile spread across his face. Looks like you found something else too, he said, pointing behind CJ. CJ turned around. Big Charlie, Garlic, Matty D, and Canary Alma were walking down the street toward them, but they weren't alone. They were followed by men from the barber shop, people from the diner, and musicians from the Midnight Melody Club. There were also folks CJ had never seen before, and people he'd only seen on posters or record covers. Hey, Click, called Charlie Garlic. You sure know how to gather a crowd. Wasn't me, said Uncle Click, winking at CJ. CJ could hardly believe his eyes. Here were some of the greatest musicians and singers in Harlem. It was like seeing the sun, the moon, and the stars all shining at once. Your nephew drew a crowd without even blowing a note, said Charlie Garlic. He won't have any trouble packing them in at the Apollo in a few years. I've never seen so many jazzy folks in one place and right in front of my own home, said Uncle Click, a twinkle in his eyes. This is really something special. Who needs a hat to appreciate that? The photographer's here, someone yelled. Everyone scrambled to get a good spot on the steps. There were so many people, some ended up sitting on the curb and standing on the sidewalk. The photographer laughed from behind his camera. Guess I better use a wider lens, he called. As the photographer adjusted his camera, the crowd settled into position for the picture. Smile, the photographer shouted. And then pop, a bright light flashed. Laughter and clapping filled the air. That night, as CJ lay in bed, light from the hallway crept into his room. Uncle Click stood in the doorway with a large box wrapped in bright red paper. I know your birthday's not until next week, said Uncle Click, but I wanted to give you this before all the magic of today wears off. CJ opened the box and lifted out a black case. His eyes widened as he raised the lid. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a brand new clarinet. CJ said, cradling the horn gently in his hands. CJ hugged his uncle tightly. Then he noticed something else in the box. You Well, look at that, said Uncle Click. It must have fallen in there last night when I was wrapping your present. You know, a jazz man like you is going to need a good hat, said Uncle Click as he placed the beret, neatly on CJ's hand. Besides, I'm getting used to not wearing one. CJ adjusted the hat and put the clarinet to his lips. He started to blow while his fingers danced over the keys. Uncle Click beamed and nodded to the beat as CJ's own sweet music rang out clear and strong for the most admiring audience in all of Harlem. And as I wrap up the read aloud, I just wanted to note that the photo that was illustrated was actually based on a real photo that was taken in Harlem. So this is the actual photo, and this is noted in the back of the book. And notables like Cab Calloway and Dizzy Gillespie and others are pictured here. So thank you. That is Sweet Music in Harlem. So now let's talk about this book. Let's go ahead back to our PowerPoint. So what I'd like you all to do now is to go ahead and access the next Padlet. Remember, this is interactive, so you got to do some stuff. So I'd like you all to access the next Padlet. You can either use the QR code that is posted on the PowerPoint, or you can access it via the link that's going to be in the chat. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to be able to just know, what did you notice about the text? And what are some things that you wonder? What did you notice? And what did you wonder? And I'll give you all a couple of minutes to kind of let the reading sink in, and then go ahead and click your notice and wonderings. I think the link is in the chat.
Sorry, everyone. I was sending it to just Dowan by accident over and over again. I was like, I'm sending it. I don't know what's happening. Okay, it's really in there now. No, that was my fault. It should be sent to everybody now, hopefully. There we go.
Okay, yeah, I see folks populating the Padlet.
Perfect.
So go ahead and type in, what did you notice and what did you wonder? For those typing in the chat, oh yes, the read aloud form, but everything that I've shared with you tonight will be shared via email later on if you are registered, so you'll get everything. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start taking a look at some of the noticings. The illustrations, lots of you all are pointing out the illustrations, as I pointed out before, and as I tell my students, Frank Morrison is absolutely one of my favorite children's books illustrators. The love of community, there's a love of music. The characters are very likable and engaging. Yes, I definitely think second graders would love these vibrant illustrations. There is a rhythm to the language. I'll get to that in a minute. I was getting ready to say something and I'll hold it. Did we wonder anything? Let's see. Wonder. Are there any more books with these characters? I would have to look because I love these characters. I wonder how to instill that love of community to my students. An extension activity. The musicians were all tall and lanky, yes. How did the illustrator get started drawing? How could this text be used as a larger anchor? So we're going to talk about that. I'm so excited. Y'all are asking really good questions. So how to turn this into a STEM activity? Ooh. Dr. Went, who is my colleague here at UDC, she's actually on with her students. So I would love to like chat with her about turning this into a STEM activity. But I would think that one way that we could do that, and this is just really off the top, this is not part of anything that I'm saying at all, is to think about how all of these people are like playing trumpets and clarinets. All of that involves like air and air pressure. So maybe there could be some connection between creating instruments and air. So that could be like that'd be like a STEAM activity where you're integrating not just science and the science of like air pressure, but also art. Okay, great. All right, we can go ahead to the next slide because I'll go ahead and we can talk about now the lesson plan for this text. So another little gift that I created for you all is the actual lesson plan, the writing lesson plan that I would use for this text. So this is centered around grade 4. I'm not sure why I picked grade 4, but it just felt easy for me to do it for grade 4. You could level this up or you could level it down. The materials that you would need would be Sweet Music in Harlem. There would be a graphic organizer, which I have not created yet, but I'll make sure Carly has it to send to you all. Pencil, pen, and a highlighter and Post-it notes. So our do now warm up anticipatory set, whatever you call it in your classroom, is how does what the characters say in a text help us to understand more about them and the story? Again, one of the things that we want to understand and get students to understand is how what characters say help us to understand what we know about them in the story. So that's just a question I want to ask. How do we know? The standards that I would cover with this would be the 4th grade writing standards, which would be writing narratives. And then it would be using dialogue. I also included one that is going to be on the lesson plan that you all receive that is talking about figurative language. And I'm just going to kind of go through the lesson plan, not word for word, but just giving you all an idea of how I would utilize this to teach writing. So, oh, thank you, Carly. So the goals or objective is that after 2 reads of Sweet Music in Harlem, students would be able to write descriptive dialogue that helps to advance the plot of their own narratives. So this lesson plan would be after a 2nd read of the text. In the 2nd read of this text, I would be asking them, and they would probably either have a graphic organizer or their own copy of the text, where they would go in and mark places where the characters say something descriptive. That's it. Just what are the characters saying something descriptive. So again, this lesson plan is for day 2 or read 2. So yesterday you all listened and read along as I read Sweet Chin Music. I'm thinking about Shawn Michaels. My son and I was talking about him last night. But anyway, moving on. Sweet Music in Harlem Aloud. We really enjoyed reading this book about Harlem and the music that thrived there. And then I would ask the students, do you all remember what music style is called? Yes, jazz. We also noticed how the author used dialogue. And a lot of figurative language. Figurative language is a lot like jazz music. It uses regular words and phrases to create unique pictures in the reader's mind, just like jazz uses regular notes to create unique sounds. In case students need it, you would review types of figurative language that would be appropriate for their grade level. For 4th grade, we talk about simile, metaphor, and perhaps personification. So for example, I would, as a teacher, I would go through and identify places in the text where the author utilizes figurative language, where the author uses figurative language to be able to communicate through dialogue. So what I would say is there was one point in the barbershop where Mr. Garlic says when Click blows his horn, that barber pole spins, but he is a little forgetful. Now, I would say as a teacher that I know that a horn can't make a barber pole spin, but this is language that the author is utilizing, kind of like jazz. It's improvisational. It's language that's creating a picture in our mind. In this case, this language would be personification, because it is giving the horn human characteristics of being able to make something else spin. So I'm going to back up and just repeat that. In this case, the author is using figurative language, much like jazz music. Improvisation is creating a picture in our mind. In this text, the author is using this line. The horn is being personified or given human characteristics to make the barber pole spin. So now what I would have the students do is they would go into their own writing and identify just a piece of dialogue. What are their characters saying? And then I would give them from the text, they would identify, remember, they've already noted places where they've seen this kind of creative, figurative language. So utilizing those places that they've noted, they can go back into their own dialogue and use examples of that figurative language in their own dialogue. Now, as a note, we'll make sure that the students are not plagiarizing. We might talk about what that means to use something as a mentor text rather than copying it. We want to look like it, not be it. So students will continue to add that figurative language to their dialogue. I will close the lesson by saying you've added more descriptive language to our narratives by improving our dialogue. Today, that we want to make sure we're using effective techniques to sequence our story. And then students would submit one before and after piece of dialogue, and then they would get into groups, and utilizing just a basic rubric, they would be able to assess each other's use of figurative language and descriptive language in their dialogue as they improve their dialogue. Now, I know that we may have diverse learners, so we want to make sure that we have sentence starters, maybe dialogue stems, perhaps an audio book for those students to be able to go back and listen to certain parts of the text again. And then we would be able to include examples of figurative language that they might be able to use in their own writing. So that's just a basic way that we would be able to utilize this book as an example of writing. One of the reasons why I chose that lesson plan specifically is because I know one of the ways that students are assessed in writing is based on their ability to incorporate strong dialogue. And I thought that them being able to utilize not just strong dialogue, but including figurative language in their dialogue would improve their writing in ways that would be able to grow and grow and grow as they became more proficient as writers. So that was the lesson plan that I incorporated for Sweet Music in Harlem. And like I said, I'll create a quick graphic organizer, and I know that Riff has some as well, but just one that goes along with this lesson to send along to you all. We can go ahead.
Hey, Dowan, I have a quick question. So would you mind if I actually attached this lesson plan that you created for this book to the book on Literacy Central so that everyone can have access to all of the lesson plans? Awesome,
just put
great.
my name on it because
listen, send me one with your logo on it and everything, and I got you.
A logo, I gotta make one now.
Thank you.
That's telling me I can make a logo, y'all. It's about to be real extra. Okay, I'm sorry. So now what I want to do is give you all some examples of other texts that can be used as mentor texts. The awesome thing about these texts is that they were actually provided by my students in my teaching reading at elementary schools class at UDC. So just give a big ups to those students who worked through these texts and created read aloud lesson plans for these texts. And it's really awesome. So the first text that we're going to look at is Owl Moon. And picture books can, and I just want to go through some of the ways that picture books can improve student writing. Picture books can show how writers add small details to their writing. What I love about how this book was introduced by my student Rakisha was that she said that this book actually utilized like a magnifying glass. So you can see the big picture, but then when you look at things through a magnifying glass, you see all of the small details. So this book is like reading through a magnifying glass. So what I would like you all to do now, I'm just going to read out the one page from this book. And then again, you'll be able to access the Padlet via the link on the PowerPoint or the link in the chat. So I'm going to take my glasses off because y'all, I'm a little older and I can't see that well. So watch me do this. Okay. So our feet crunched over the crisp snow and little gray footprints followed us. They made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up. And my short, round shadow bungled after me. So what I would like you all to do is just very quickly think about how the author effectively uses small details. And I'll read it one more time. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. I made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. So just note in the Padlet how the author uses small details. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I love this like crunch and crisp. So you can hear these sounds. It becomes very not just visual, but it becomes very audible, um, descriptive. You're able to create mental images. Great book for students to identify different figures of language. Absolutely, because we have automatopoeia, which is the crunch and crisp. So this would be excellent, especially for those advanced figurative language skills. One of the things I love about this book also is that it is a really good example of the economy of words to create very vivid and expansive images. The words on a page took up very little space, but they create an image in our minds that is very expansive and broad. So again, picture books help us create these images utilizing small details that create broad and expansive images. Love this book for that. Thank you. And we can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, this book is so funny. My students shared and provided this book for our class. So picture books can give students a fun example of establishing situation in a narrative. So one of the things that I believe that students have to be able to do as writers is to be able to create situation. And when we talk about situation, it is kind of where the story is taking place, not necessarily so much the physical setting, but what are all of the things that are happening? What is the world that that the author has created? That's what I like to think that the situation is, almost like a snow globe. When you're looking at the book, what is the world that you see inside of that snow globe? Bathe the Cat does such a good job of creating situation, of dropping us into this very humorous story where everything gets bungled up until we get to the end of the story. Students could utilize this book as a mentor text to be able to create situation that is fun and light, but also to create situation that changes slightly from page to page and makes the reader follow along very closely in order to be able to understand what is happening as this situation shifts slightly. Very excellent example, very fun example of how to establish situation. We can go ahead to the next book. So picture books can provide an excellent example of how to write informative text with facts and concrete details. So this is always our, I believe our W2 standard, where we talk about informational text. This is a classic text about a boy who was able to create windmills in his home country. This text gives factual information and provides students a way to be able to convey information and factual details that's not boring and staid. One of the things that I've noticed about student writing is that sometimes students can be extremely imaginative when it comes to narrative writing. However, when they go over and they have to write explanatory or informational text, their writing becomes dry. And I think that there are ways that writing can still be exciting and have movement, just like in narrative writing, but we're sharing facts and details. This book is a good example of how that's done. Knuffle Bunny. So one of the classic tasks that students are asked to do is to write from another character's POV. Now, Knuffle Bunny is one of those classic Mo Willems tales. And you would initially think that Mo Willems is a book for like younger readers, kindergarten, first grade, which just as a general read aloud may be. But I would utilize Knuffle Bunny to be able to switch characters and have students be able to write from another character's point of view. In this case, the book is written from a third-person omniscient narrator. However, I believe that students would get a kick out of being able to write from Knuffle Bunny's perspective or the baby's perspective. This helps them to be able to understand narrative techniques, also to be able to understand how different perspectives change the story. Because I'm not going to tell y'all what happened if you're not familiar with this book, it's super cute. But if I'm looking at it from the baby's perspective, what a baby sees versus what a stuffed bunny sees are going to be very different. And this helps students to be able to understand the differences in perspective and point of view, and also how they affect narrative structure. So Knuffle Bunny is great for that. And this was from, I'm sorry, the previous text, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, was from my student Eric. And this is from, oh my gosh, I just forgot. What was this? I had to know. I'm sorry. Oh no, this was from Maureen. This was Maureen, Knuffle Bunny. It was Maureen. Sorry, Maureen. I remembered you. All right. So yes, that was Knuffle Bunny. We're gonna go ahead to our last one. Okay, our last one was from Kathy in my class, and this is BU. So BU is a text that can it has two purposes, I think, as far as read alouds and writing in a classroom. One of them is to be able to link words or link ideas with words or phrases. So in this text, there is kind of the heading BU, and then there is a different category of being you that is applicable to that particular stage. So this helps students to be able to categorize their writing and to be able to say these words connect to this particular topic while these words connect to another topic. This text could be a mentor text to help students with organization, especially for some of our ELL students to be able to say, okay, if this is my topic, what is going to go underneath of this specific topic? Okay, and if I have another topic, what is going to go underneath of that specific topic. So I think this is a great example of that. And that's by BU by Peter Reynolds. We can go to the next slide. So what I've done here is just provided a few links of additional resources. Of course, the Common Core State Standards, Facing History Read Alouds, they give a lot of good information about read alouds, especially with historical texts. Reading Rockets, this particular link gives some examples of read alouds. And the education world also provides a lot of links about read alouds. And as I said, the final version of this may have a few more links that I'll add in. Okay, so what I would like you all to do now is we have one last Padlet. So if you can access it via the QR code or the link that will show up. And if you could just answer the questions, what did you learn? How has your thinking changed? Or maybe it hasn't. And then how will you use the information with your students or children? Just take a couple minutes. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to go through a few of these. The picture book checklist, like again, I think it's great to just kind of use books as a community builder. But I think when you're actually using picture books to um, teach a specific skill, you want to kind of have planned out how this is going to go. I've been doing this for a while, so sometimes I can kind of pick up as I'm reading, but I think just as an organizational tool, it's helpful to have that text, to have kind of that outline in mind before you go into the text. A couple of my students, when they did their picture book presentations, had sticky notes in their books to kind of remind them what to do. Yes, your fifth graders definitely can use Knuffle Bunny. They will crack up laughing, and then they will be able to write from a different perspective, because that, again, is one of the things that I see again and again and again. Rewrite this text from a different perspective. So I think having fifth graders to be able to do something that might feel familiar might help them when they're asked to do this with a more grade level text. Picture books are not just for littles. Oh, I love a good picture book. Sometimes I'll read one just to kind of settle myself. You can tell I got a little bit of energy. Anything else? Yes, picture books can make a huge huge impression. I think you could really use a picture book to teach anything. Especially as far as ELA is concerned and writing. I think that picture books have so much flexibility and malleability that they can really be used across the range of English language arts and writing. So really feel free to like flex and pick up those picture books and see what you can work out with them. And you might be surprised how your students are able to use those books as mentor texts and implement something that they've seen an author do and do it in their own writing. Like, it really might surprise you. Yes, the planning ahead is key, because you can kind of go off into something else, but you want to make sure, like, you get hung up in the illustration of it all, because it's all beautiful, but you want to make sure that you stay focused as you're moving towards the writing. Thank you all so much. These were great responses. I think at this point, we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. So if you have any questions, I guess you can go ahead and type them in the Q&A, not the chat, but the Q&A section.
Yep, I just turned the chat on, I think, for everyone to be able to write to everyone or you. So I think they should be able to use the chat too. So either one
Okay.
should work. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about the video before, Dowan. I wanted to see your beautiful face the whole time. I don't know what was going on before.
It's okay. I'm here now.
Thank you everyone so much. And thank you, Dowan. I know, and thank you to all of your students. I think this was such a cool experience and just an organic way to get them involved. So thank you to all of you. I know you're on the call as well. So I really appreciate your hard work and your time, because it's 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and I really appreciate you all. So for everyone that joined, thank you again. Be on the lookout. Usually within the next 24 to 48 hours, I will send I got distracted watching from the Philippines. Good morning. Yeah, good morning. That I shouldn't be talking crap about the time over here. Well, thank you all again so much. Be on the lookout for all the resources they're recording, and we'll stay on for a couple more minutes and see if anyone has any questions. I think I see one. I see one in the chat. Excuse me, in the Q&A, Dowan, if you can see it.
Okay, let me see, because I think my Q&A. Oh, here we go. How do you introduce mentor text to students? Hey, so one of the ways that I introduce mentor text to students, again, is through the read aloud, but also by identifying very specific things. And maybe that's what you would do in the read aloud planner, is really identifying those very specific things that you want students to be listening for as you're reading. So you're pointing them in the direction of what you want them to emulate as they go into their own reading. And then you want to make sure that in the conversation that follows, while we're having a general comprehension conversation, that in that next read, you are giving students the opportunity to be on the lookout, whether it's visually or in some type of writing, for those things that they need to be emulating in their own writing. So I think those are the keys. I also introduce mentor text by letting them know that I utilize mentor text. And I think that's a huge thing as burgeoning writers. I've taught middle school for a long time. And one of the things that my middle schoolers would say would be crazy stuff like, I like to write, but I don't like to read. And I'm like, then how are you a good writer if you don't read? I was just very annoyed and mortified by that. But I always say that good readers make good writers. So I show them how I emulate writers that I admire in my own writing. And I think that is a good way to help them, because some students feel like they're copying, and it's not copying, it is actually utilizing them as inspiration and model. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. That was a great question. Any other questions?
I don't see any questions. I see a lot of praise for you though, because you're awesome. But
Thank
yes,
you all.
seriously, Dowan, if you want to send over that lesson plan and however you want to up it and make it like give yourself all the credit, send it to us and we will attach it to that book, and I'll send you all of that stuff so you can share with your audience as well.
Sure thing. And again, I'll do the graphic organizer and make sure that folks have access to that as well.
Awesome.
But this was so much fun. Thank you for inviting me. And you all, please, and tomorrow is Friday. It is the perfect day to break out a picture book with your students. I don't care what grade level you teach. Find a picture book and sit down and turn the lights dim a little bit and, practice your little characters and read to them babies. Read to the babies. And then write. Do some good writing. Thank y'all so much. This was fun.
Dowan, someone wants to know how they can get access to you, just you as a person.
To me as a person, you can contact my publicist.
Stop.
I am playing. Okay, so you can get access to me via my email address, which is the easiest way to get to me, and that is my name. It is Dowan, DOWAN .McNair-Lee, no hyphen, at udc.edu. So Dowan .McNair-Lee at udc.edu.
Awesome.
I would be delighted to talk to folks and want some help with your schools or what have you, as far as integrating picture books, as far as any kind of writing or reading help or assistance that you all need. I would be delighted to help folks out.
Awesome. I'll definitely make sure I include your email when I send the follow-up as well.
Sure thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dowan. This was so much fun, and I'm glad that you all were able to participate, and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Y'all have a good evening.
You too. We'll talk soon, Dowan.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.